She's Katie Montgomery. He's Justin Joseph. These best friends are serving subpoenas to bad advice weekly with Wrong Way Forward. Now, here's Katy and Justin.
Hi, and welcome to Wrong Way Forward. This is the podcast where we try to give good advice. My name is Katy Montgomery, and I am here with Justin Joseph. And I think today we're going to cover a topic that might be fairly controversial. And Justin, this is about should men pay? Now, yes. I do want to give a caveat. This is not should they pay all the time, but this is particularly at the beginning of a relationship, definitely the first date, and maybe, as the relationship kind of develops, should men pay?
Well, I know how you feel about this. I'm guessing being from the South. Would you like to let any of our new viewers know what your thoughts are on this?
Well, I think here's the thing. I think, first of all, we should probably play a clip.
Okay.
We have Scott Galloway, and some of you might know him. He's a marketing professor at NYU. He's recently written a book. He does a podcast with Kara Swisher, but he's recently written a book, and he's on the kind of podcast, talk, radio circuit, and he's getting some viral kind of comments. And let's first listen to what he says, and then I will give my feedback. And Justin, I'm very interested to hear kind of how you react to Scott Galloway's thoughts on men should pay.
All right, here's Scott Galloway.
When they're on a date, even if they're not economically less well off than the woman, because the bottom line is, and you reference this, men get more from relationships than women. And so if you're asking a woman to engage in the possibility of a relationship, and also the downside of sex is much greater for a woman, much greater risks involved in sex, that quite frankly, one way you show that you are willing to level up and recognize the investment in the skewed advantage towards you of entering into a relationship that widows are happier than they were when they were married. Widowers are less happy. I mean, there's just a lot of data showing that marriage is better for the man than it is for the woman. So if you're going to ask a woman to potentially enter into that type of relationship, I think from the get-go, you have an obligation to show you're really committed and serious. And one easy way to do that, and this sounds really crass, and I teach my boys this, you always pay.
All right. Well, if I would have said that, you would have thrown me off the air as a sexist MF. I'm just surprised that you think this is good advice.
No, I mean, I think it's fantastic advice. And I think the way that I think about it is, first of all, who is doing the asking? And so if someone invites me out, particularly for a first date, I would expect them to pay. They are hosting me. They took the initiative. So I think not following through makes me see kind of a lack of chivalry. If you don't want to pay, then let's not go do something that requires, dollar bills. But I think also my take on this is not necessarily the economic viewpoint that Scott Galloway has, but I am at an age in life, and I think we know from this podcast that, I'm almost 52 and I'm not married. I take care of a lot of stuff. I take care of myself. I take care of my clients. I take care of my family. I take care of my father and mother's estate. I take care of their legacy. You name it, on and on and on and on. And for me, it signals, if you're not going to pay, because to be honest, I don't ask men out, is that if you're going to ask me out on a date and then not pay, I'm like, I need someone who is going to anticipate my needs, who is going to problem solve, who is going to improve my life, who is going to take charge. I've got enough, testosterone and get going in me enough. I need someone who's going to grab the bull by the horns. And it is very unattractive if you've asked me out on a date and you're not going to pay.
It's so interesting. I hear everything you just said, but what was interesting when you did your soliloquy of what you need someone who takes charge. You didn't say, I need someone to take care of me. Is that an avoidance word for you? Do you not like to say, I want someone to take care of me? Would you say, I want a man to take care of me? Say that.
Yes, I would. I mean, I could take care of myself, clearly.
See, just say it.
But I would love for a man to take care of me. And I remember...
Is that hard? Is that hard to say?
I don't know if it's hard because I'm clearly capable on my own. But if I'm going to introduce someone into my life and the work and the energy and the compromise, I need to know that I'm not the one carrying a lot of the weight. And I have found, I remember this, I have an English basement. I live in Washington, D.C. And
What's an
there would
English basement?
sometimes, English basement is like kind of a separate entrance. You'll see sometimes
Oh,
people rent them out. They might be called like in-law suites. And
interesting.
I,
As a realtor, I've never heard it called that before.
oh, really? And I had some problems with flooding down there. And I just remember, I was with one of my boyfriends and I was down there for a long time just cleaning up, and he never came and kind of took the initiative. And I
Yeah.
was like, well, that's done. I'm like, I want you to step up. I want you to get things done. I'd like you to, it doesn't have to be you're 100% responsible for all of the bills and all of the decisions. That would drive me insane. But I need to know that you're taking initiative and doing things. And I think the lack of paying, it also signals to me, particularly on a first date, is I like people who are fiscally, responsible with their money and are good stewards of their money. But I've dated a cheap ass and it is horrible. It is just really limiting in terms of what I want to do, what I find interesting, and where I want to spend my money. And if someone's not going to pay for dinner for me the first time, it's a real signal like this is a cheapskate.
Well, let me say I agree with you on the rule that whomever invites pays. I think that is the golden rule, and so I agree. And I would say 90% of the time that is the man. And so if the man invites, it should be the man who pays. Having said that, I think we should also be in a place where a woman, if she wants to invite a man out on a date, she should absolutely do that, and she should offer to pay since I invited you. And I hope the man fights her on that. So my issue with Scott Galloway, and I really do find, I remember when I first saw him on the air, it was probably on the Today Show or Morning Joe, some NBC network, couple years ago, and he was just getting onto the scene, and he was talking about how the corrosiveness of our younger generation, et cetera. And I thought he had a lot of really valuable things to say, but he really has come for men of late. Do you think
Yes.
so?
Yeah, I think he
And
has.
he's a
And I
gay
think,
man. He's a gay
no,
man.
he's not.
Is he not? Are you
Yeah.
sure?
Yes, 100. He is married with a wife and I think two children.
Oh,
Kara Swisher, his podcast partner, she's
well, I know
brilliant.
her.
She's a lesbian. Here's the thing. He has a hypothesis that men are lonely, men are underperforming. The reason why we may have particular leaders and certain actions happen is because, men, particularly white men, feel maligned. And it's acting out. And I think he's gone full in on this hypothesis
He
and he's
has.
hitting it from every angle. And it's actually fairly clever because he is getting, viral, and he's putting something out there as part of his larger hypothesis, which he's got a lot of research. I mean, they are finding that, loneliness and health outcomes, et cetera, among men are much lower than women. But he's thrown this out there and he's getting a lot of attention. But I think there's something to be said about, and again, I think about so many times when a relationship started and, I would do the fake, kind of go for my wallet because I didn't want someone to think,
Sure.
but
It's the right thing to do.
right. But what I would usually do is by the time it was date 3 or 4, I'd be like, let me get this one. Right. But I think, again, it's like, where is the chivalry? And I think you can be a feminist, which I very much am, and want to be treated well and Justin taken care of, and have someone, particularly if you're a highly competent person, you want someone who has a little bit of take charge and ownership, and not demonstrating that in a first date for some very strong women I think can be a turnoff.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I think generally that is the right rule. I think it, if we've learned anything on this podcast is to not make a generalization about anything. And I think Galloway does that a lot about men, right or wrong. And I just think it's some dangerous territory. But I agree. I think that in the end, it's whomever, the golden rule of dating is whomever invites pays. Josh and I, our first date, I paid.
Mhm.
I probably invited him out, but the second date, the expectation, and again, we're two men, so it's very different. The expectation was that he was going to pay. He forgot his wallet.
But if we asked Josh, would he agree that that was the expectation?
Well, I just think in that situation it was because, we're two men and I paid the first time, he paid the second, and he forgot his wallet. And if you want to see panic on someone's face when the expectation is that you pay and that you don't have your wallet, it was really fun to watch him just panic on a second date that he really was excited about. And I mean, I assume, I hope. and that he didn't have his wallet, and he had to tell me he didn't have his wallet. And so anyway, that was a good memory. We laugh about that all the time, but it's a little different because we're two men.
Yeah. I mean, I also have a general rule of thumb in my family where the sibling that makes the most money should always pay. And that's not me. So it's worked out in my favor.
Yeah, I love that rule. Well, on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about the other side of this. Are there situations where a woman should pay? We'll talk about that on the other side. We're also going to be talking about competency porn. It was a new term to me. We'll explain what that means when we get back on the other side. We'll be right back.
You've been listening to Wrong Way Forward, where bad advice goes to die and then gets resurrected just so we can roast it again.
If you're enjoying the chaos, hit like and subscribe and come back every Thursday for new episodes.
Have a new topic or some disastrously bad advice you want to dissect? Email wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. Include your contact info.
Now back to Wrong Way Forward.
Roasting the worst advice ever. Welcome back to the Katy and Justin podcast.
So we're back, and we are talking about should men pay, particularly on the first date. So it was interesting when Justin brought this to me and kind of Scott Galloway's comments on men should always pay. I had just seen an article in Vogue, and the title was The Girl Who Wouldn't Split the Bill. And it's really funny when you read this article, this woman met someone, and it was actually a brother of someone she'd been on a date. And he goes, "Oh yeah, you're the one who won't, who expects men to pay and you won't pay." And she goes into this diatribe of why she doesn't pay. And I thought there were a few things that she said is, first of all, it's going back to who invited whom, which is important. But going back to this idea of, being a feminist. And I think, number one, there is a massive wage gap still in not just America, but in the world between men and women. And I think going back to being a feminist is the idea is that it's your choice. We have fought for you to have choices. And we fight for you to have your individual choice. And I remember talking to a friend, and I would say 95% of my friends work full time. And this is a friend who had decided to, had a very accomplished career, very educated, and had stepped away once she had had children for a while. And she was constantly just at odds about it. And I said, this is why we march on Washington. This is why we are feminists. And so that you have the choice and that people respect that you have done what is best for you, your family, and your children.
How did that manifest itself that she was constantly, this is interesting to me because I see this a lot in my own friends who decide to do that. How did that manifest itself?
I mean, I think it's being in the minority. When you look around for, your friends, I think when you have a graduate professional degree, there's somewhat of an expectation that you will, the time and energy and the sweat equity you've put into that it will, follow through. And I think
But was she like uncomfortable around people who were in the work? Could you see her? Was she talking about her children all the time? Like, what did she do that made you, that you felt
she was just talking about it. I think it was, feeling though she wasn't in the majority, right? It was feeling though she was, one of very few, and everyone else was, continuing to kind of work full time. Sure. And I just kept saying it's about the choice. And I think it really drives me crazy when somebody says, "Oh, well, you're a woman and you want the man to pay. You're not a feminist." And I thought this article about the girl who wouldn't split the bill, she's like, this is my choice. This is a decision I get to make and it should be respected. And I think they're two separate things. So I thought that was really interesting. I also think, kind of going back to Justin, you saying like, I want to be taken care of. I wrote down a few things that I just thought. I want someone to anticipate my needs, problem solve, make decisions. I want to be able to turn my brain off. Sometimes I want to stop thinking, anticipating, playing devil's advocate. And I want to be able to trust his judgment. And I think paying that for that first time, for me, signals those things.
Do you have friends who feel differently? Do you have feminists, and I guess they don't have to be feminists, but do you have friends who feel differently?
My guess would be most of my friends would align on this. It'll be really interesting, when the episode comes out, what people think about that. And I'm a very generous person in paying and treating, but I think, again, establishing right out of the gate that kind of first thing, which I think leads very nicely into what you were talking about, competence porn. Let me tell you what the new turn on is. I mean, the new turn on is like, if you are highly proficient at something and you do it well and you do it right, and I don't have to think about a thing. I trust you immensely. Oh my God, hot and heavy.
So competency porn is a term that I think is relatively new on the sort of the landscape. But, there was a day when we would watch things because we wanted to see people self-destructing because it made us feel better about ourselves. And they're saying there's been a transition with how uneasy the world is, that people now like to watch people who are exceptionally good at what they do. And so some examples of the old days where we watched and shows that were successful, for example, were things like The Bear. While the characters are talented, there's still a ton of mistakes they make. Succession, which is just literally a dumpster fire of a family. Better Call Saul, I did watch that, but again, really smart guy, but it was just he was self-destructive, etc. So the transition, they say, is that people are now watching shows that it's more about how together people are, like Suits. Did you watch Suits?
I watched some of it. I thought a good example was this, because I normally would not watch this movie because I do not care for this actor, but I was on an airplane and I watched Top Gun Maverick. And
Yeah.
I think Tom Cruise as an individual is fairly incompetent. I mean, the stuff that he does. What's that religion? It's not even a religion.
Science.
Scientology. Yeah. Scientology.
And like
the
weird
fact that
science.
Yeah, it is. Exactly. But his stuff with Scientology and how crazy he is in his relationships, and the fact that he, berates Brooke Shields for having postpartum depression, and the fact that he doesn't believe in medicine and vaccines. I think he's a fairly incompetent
And then he
person.
has no contact with his daughter Siri, which is just so weird to me.
All of it's weird. And when I watched, Top Gun Maverick, I was like, damn straight. They called in somebody from, I'm going to sound horrible because I'm very much a global citizen. But of course, they called in someone from America to get around that mountain thing and do whatever they needed to do. Yes, they're going to problem solve. I love the idea. When I looked at an article about competency porn, like I had just watched Apollo 13. I love the concept of the Martian, right? Matt Damon is stranded and he's so smart he starts to grow potatoes. Like I love that. I love it's like Step Up, Moneyball, Spotlight.
For me, it's like Top Chef is just people at the top of their game generally. I mean, any cooking show I think is a good example of competency porn.
That is interesting, Justin, because I've watched a lot of cooking shows and there's a lot of disasters.
Well, there are, but Top Chef is not one of them. It's people who are operating at the top level of their game. And no, I literally watch any competition cooking show there is. You name it, I've watched it. I just watched The Renovators, an Australian show from the 80s, and there's 65 episodes, and it's been heaven for me. Just because it's just something mindless I could turn on.
Justin, this plus the statins and the blood pressure medicine and the fact you never want to go anywhere. I just finished a book called The Correspondent, and I'm like, you remind me of Sybil, the main character.
Well, that Sybil, maybe that tracks to some degree. Why? What? I'm confused where the through line is on all of these.
Yeah,
things.
it's just. Sybil kind of like stays at home and her life's kind of simple and she's kind of old.
Yeah, and I have 2 dogs. I'm now a cat lady basically with 2 dogs. I mean, my life is just, I was thinking this morning with the 2 of them running around that I'm like, I live in a farm. I just live in an effing farm. You can never come visit again. You would die.
I can never come visit again. And also,
Josh, we talked about this. Well, if Katie comes out, we're going to have to get her a hotel because she cannot stay here.
Well, the thing about it too is I want to be fair to you. I'm pretty old myself. I hurt my back on Sunday doing absolutely nothing but literally rising up from the couch. And I'm in a separate room filming this. And I'm like, I really wish I had my heating pad.
And the sweater looks a little doily-ish to me.
Justin, this is called Fair Isle. This is an Alex Mule sweater.
Well, again, this just tracks with the stat. And I'm old. I don't know these things.
It's not. People at home, I do not wear a doily. That sounds like I'm like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And
that's a good plug for our YouTube channel, youtubechannel.com/Rolling Forward Podcast. You can actually see what she's wearing. On that note, back to I'm just so excited. Both the girls are going to their beauty appointments this afternoon, and I get to clean the house, which I just am ecstatic about, to have no one in the house that I can just clean.
There you go. And well, on that note, let's take a break, and then maybe you can think about how you're not 80 and come back as the true 52-year-old you are, and we'll take some viewer emails.
Thanks for streaming Wrong Way Forward, the weekly reminder that advice is usually free for a reason. We call out bad advice wherever it hides: boardrooms, break rooms, and even book clubs.
Enjoying this dumpster fire? Like, subscribe, and check back every Thursday for new episodes. Want us to roast your favorite piece of nonsense? Email us at wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to include your contact info. We're not psychic, just judgmental. And now, back to Wrong Way Forward.
Roasting the worst advice ever. Welcome back to the Katy and Justin.
Welcome back. So this week we have had two interesting topics: should men pay, as well as competency porn. The through line we've decided is that, what was the through line? How did we make that turn? The through line was that,
I mean, I think the through line is that we are old, and we want people who come in, take care of stuff, get it done, and don't require us any extra energy to think. We just come in and do it.
I agree. And what's interesting, just to follow up and kind of put a final bow on that, is, Josh and I could not be more different people, but, Josh would not come down and fix the basement or the English basement flooding problem. That would be something I would deal with, but he goes above and beyond to do his half of whatever that means.
That is actually correct. Like, your landscaping and yard is beautiful, and that's 100% Josh.
That's 100% Josh, and he makes up for things that I don't do. I mean, it's a good partnership, and that's why it's worked, even though we could not be more different people, and that I'm insane and now officially old per Katy. All right, on that note, let's take a couple of your emails. Let's see. I think I've been living someone else's life. Well, let's first start by saying, don't forget to you can email us at wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. You can also join the conversation on our text line at 720-251-4450. Again, 720-251-4450. We want to know if you are a big proponent that men should pay, or if you believe that whomever asks should pay, or that you think it should be a woman should pay if you are a woman. We certainly want to know that as well. So join the conversation whenever you're ready. A couple of your emails before we tag out this week. This one, I think I've been living someone else's life. Justin and Katy, I didn't expect to cry during a podcast about bad advice, but here we are. You were joking about living the wrong life really well, and it hit me harder than I'd like to admit. I'm 39, married, 2 kids, good job, blah, blah, blah. And yet I feel optimized for applause instead of happiness. I picked my career because it sounded impressive at Thanksgiving. I bought the house because it's what you do next. I'm not miserable. That's just the problem. I'm fine. And it's just talking about basically that, how do you know when it's a crisis versus a calling? It's interesting. This is, I guess, in response to when we talked about building a life, or I'm not sure which episode this talks about, but anyway, that's one viewer email. We also got some that says, let's see here, brutal honesty ruined my engagement. How you two, after your episode, I realized that I weaponized just being honest in my relationship. My fiance asked if I liked the ring he picked. Interesting. And I said, quote, that's not what I would have chosen. Oh, that's a good one. How do you handle that conversation, Katy?
Well, I think it's interesting, and I think next week is when we really deep dive into brutal honesty. I think I'm not absolutely positive. Justin and I are not great with keeping all of our episodes straight.
Is that our author?
No, I think next week we're going to film the author, but we're going to air the brutal honesty one where we did a deeper dive. First of all, I want to say to this man, you're incompetent. What kind of idiot buys a ring without doing some pre-shopping? Let's walk through, don't buy your ring at Tiffany. It's going to be way overpriced because it's Tiffany, but go do the walk through Tiffany, go and, go see some, I think that's absolutely asinine that somebody made such a big and fundamental purchase that someone wears every day and didn't get any sense of what this person liked or wanted.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I think the brutal honesty conversation we had in the recent weeks was a really interesting and good conversation, just because everybody is going to view that differently. But again, thank you guys for joining us this week. Again, join the conversation, 720-251-4450 or wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. So thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next week on Wrong Way Forward.
All right, that's a wrap on this week's episode of Wrong Way Forward. Remember, the only thing worse than taking bad advice is giving it.
If you've liked what you've heard, like, subscribe, or follow us wherever you stream podcasts. And if you've got a topic or need some advice we'll probably regret giving, email us at wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Wrong Way Forward.